just did a complete 180 and is going to get one of the most critical weapons for air defense to Ukraine. The last couple of months have been chaotic for Ukraine and the United States. The U.S. temporarily halted military aid and intelligence sharing to Ukraine and even branded Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky as a dictator. But now U.S.-made Patriot missiles will soon be making their way to Ukraine. And this is enormous news for Ukraine. Zelensky has highlighted the need for stronger air defenses against Russia for months. Now he has a promise from Trump to work together on the delivery of more Patriot missiles, which could change the entire complexion of the Ukraine war. On March 19th, the Kyiv Independent reported on the outcome of an hour-long phone call between Trump and Zelensky. That conversation, which came in the wake of Trump's 2-hour discussions with Russian President Vladimir Putin, focused primarily on the then-new ceasefire offer made by Russia's leader. However, Zelensky also made a request during the call. Ukraine needs more Patriot missiles. Will the U.S. provide them? Remarkably, Trump said yes, to an extent. He told Zelensky that while the U.S. itself won't send any more missiles to Ukraine directly, at least for the time being, Trump will work alongside Ukraine to help them find any Patriot missiles that are available in Europe. Zelensky's requests for the new missiles came because he believes the Patriot system is key to Ukraine's efforts to protect its citizens and most valuable military targets from Russia's constant drone and missile bombardments. Trump's acceptance of this request means he's conducted a complete turnaround on his Ukraine war policy. In February, he was accusing Zelensky of having started the war. Now he's helping Ukraine defend itself. However, there's a catch. While Trump told Zelensky that he'll work with Ukraine's European partners to source more Patriot missiles, the question now is whether those partners will be willing to give up their munitions. The UK-based The Times media outlet says that isn't a given. It points out that a single Patriot battery costs just over $1 billion, with each missile fired being worth $388 million. Zelensky wants more of both. He's asked for an additional 10 to 12 Patriot launchers in the past, supplementing the 6 Ukraine is believed to have. Plus, he needs missiles for those launchers to be effective. The problem, from the European perspective, is twofold: cost and military weakening. The Times points out that Germany, Romania, and the Netherlands have already donated Patriot missile launchers to Ukraine's cause. Other nations that have them but have yet to donate include Spain, Greece, Switzerland, and Poland. However, as the Times says, European countries that operate Patriot air defenses may be reluctant, however, to further weaken their already fraying anti-ballistic missile capabilities. That's an important point. Every Patriot launcher or missile that a European country donates is one less launcher or missile it has to defend itself against future enemies. Worse yet, the combined cost and build time for Patriot means that these systems aren't easy to replace. Raytheon, which builds the Patriot launcher, already has a multi-year backlog of orders. The situation is bad enough that Germany recently signed a $388 billion deal with Israel to purchase the latter's Arrow 3 air defenses. The message from this deal is simple. Germany isn't getting its hands on Patriot missiles and launchers fast enough. If that's the case, does it, and Europe's other major military powers, have enough to send to Ukraine? According to Bruegel, Europe has long relied the American-made Patriot for its ground-based aerial defense. Data provided via the U.S. Foreign Military Sales, or FMS program, reveals that the U.S. has sold 1,119 Patriot missiles as part of 5 separate contracts between Putin's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 and December 2024. Most of those missiles have gone to European countries. Germany purchased 600 of them in August 2024. Spain bought 51 nearly a year before. In 2022, Switzerland and the Netherlands invested in a total of 168 missiles. That creates a European total of 819, with the other 300 being purchased by Saudi Arabia. those 300 missiles are immediately off the table. Saudi Arabia has positioned itself as a neutral party in the Ukraine conflict, as evidenced by it being the country where delegates from Trump's camp have held meetings with Russia and Ukraine. Plus, Saudi Arabia has no vested interest in Ukraine's defense against Russia or the wider implications of Putin's invasion that affect Europe. As for the other 819 missiles purchased by European countries, we don't know how many of those Europe's Patriot users would consider spare. That's especially the case given that the US only produces 740 Patriot missiles annually. Though the country's defense manufacturers aim to scale that number up to 1,070 by 2027, this speed of manufacturing still creates a problem. For instance, if Germany gave half of the missiles it ordered in 2024 to Ukraine, it may have to wait several years to get through the US missile manufacturing backlog before it can replenish that stock. Still, these are all details that Trump and Zelensky will confront in the future. For now, Ukraine is jubilant. It's gone from dealing with a seemingly adversarial US president to working with somebody who's promising to find ways to supply the country with more of the aerial defense systems it needs. And make no mistake about it, the Patriot is vital to Ukraine's defense against Russia. According to Army technology, the Patriot missile system is a long-range aerial defense system capable of operating in all weather conditions and at all altitudes. It was designed by the US in the 1980s as a counter to cruise and ballistic missiles, as well as a means to shoot down advanced aircraft, such as Russia's fighter jets. Each Patriot is equipped with a track-via missile, or TVM, guidance system that allows the missiles the launcher shoots to correct their courses in mid-flight. That's vital to the Patriot's role as an aerial defense system. With Russian missiles and aircraft easily being capable of breaking the sound barrier, the Patriot's TVM makes it harder for both to evade the Patriot missiles. As for those missiles, each carries a 154-pound warhead and can travel for up to 43.4 miles. That may not seem like much of a range. However, the most important thing about Patriot missiles is that they can reach an altitude of 14.9 miles. That's more than enough range for them to tackle missiles and aircraft near the heights of their flight ceilings, meaning Patriot missiles blow threats out of the skies before they ever get close to the ground. There are also advanced versions of these missiles which have longer ranges and pack more firepower, though it's unclear how many of them Ukraine has or how many it could get from its European partners. However, what makes Patriot so effective for Ukraine's needs is that it launches multiple missiles at once. Each launcher can rattle off 4 missiles simultaneously. That's great for offering a plan B for any incoming threat. For instance, a Russian fighter jet may have to deal with 4 incoming missiles rather than 1, making evasive maneuvers much more difficult. Each launcher firing multiple missiles also allows Patriot to target several threats at once, which is where it comes in handy for dealing with Russia's constant missile and drone barrages. Add to all of this the AN/MPQ-53 Phases Array Radar system built into every launcher, which has a range of 62 miles, and can track up to 100 targets simultaneously. And you get one of Ukraine's most effective defensive weapons. And Ukraine has used that weapon well since Putin's forces invaded. For instance, April 2024 saw Defense News report on an incident where Russia launched one of its Kinzhal hypersonic missiles at Ukraine's capital Kyiv. That missile is terrifying. It's capable of reaching speeds of 7,700 miles per hour, which is around 10 times the speed of sound, and packs devastating explosive force. The good news for Ukraine is that it had received a Patriot missile battery just a month prior to Russia using that missile. The Patriot had never been tested against a hypersonic missile. Even so, the system was able to block Russia's Kinzhal, defusing the hypersonic missile before it managed to reach Kyiv. That's just one example of how Ukraine uses Patriots. There are many more. The same outlet reveals that Ukraine has used its Patriots to shoot down Russian fighter jets, including the Su-34, when they were flying almost 100 miles away. It's also proven itself effective at dealing with the missile and drone barrages we mentioned earlier. As Ben Hodges, who's a retired three-star general who commanded the U.S. Army forces in Europe after Putin annexed Crimea, puts it, Patriot has proven to be a very reliable system. The Ukrainians learned very quickly how to operate it, and, even more impressively, they learned very quickly how to employ it to great effect. Is it any wonder that Zelensky wants more of the missiles that allow Ukraine to leverage Patriot so well? His request for between 10 and 12 more Patriot systems hasn't come out of nowhere. Ukraine's president knows that Patriot has already proven vital to his country's defense. Having more of the systems and the missiles they fire will minimize the impact of Russia's aerial assaults on Ukraine's civilian and military positions. In doing so, they'll also relieve pressure on the ground, allowing Ukraine's army to focus on Russia's constant human wave assaults. That's why Trump's 180 is so important to Ukraine. However, we also can't ignore that Russia has seen some success against Ukraine's Patriots. As impressive as the aerial defense system may be, it's not invincible. Since at least July 2024, Russia has been trying to counter the Patriot threat. That's according to the Kyiv Independent, which says that satellite images captured from the Ukrainians' Dovintsev air base showcased Russia's approach. Interestingly, Ukraine has Russia fooled on that occasion. The warplanes and Patriot launchers Putin believed his forces destroyed were actually mock-ups planted at the base. As Ukraine's Air Force commander Mykola Oleshchuk said at the time, "Thanks to everyone who helps with quality mock-ups of aircraft and air defense systems. The enemy has fewer Iskanders, and more mock-ups will arrive." That's how dangerous the Patriot is to Russia. Putin is so desperate to take them out of the fight that he's ordering his forces to waste munitions attacking faked versions of the air defense system. Ukraine is taking advantage. Unfortunately, other Russian strikes against Patriot systems seem to have been more effective. For instance, Russia claimed that it struck a Patriot system in October 2024. It said that it destroyed 2 Patriot launcher stations made in the U.S. Along with a radar and control system, those launchers need to fire their missiles. According to Bulgarian military, a further 4 Patriot launchers were struck during a precision strike carried out on December 15. Russia used a combination of its Iskander-M missiles, drones, and tactical aircraft to take out the launchers, claimed the country's defense ministry. How true these Russian claims are hasn't been determined. However, they serve as reminders to Zelensky that he needs more launchers and missiles to ensure that Russia can't degrade Ukraine's Patriot threat. Trump's 180-degree turnaround should at least help Ukraine to source more of the latter. So after weeks of consternation between Trump and Zelensky, why has the U.S. president chosen now to offer more Patriot support to Ukraine? After all, for much of February, it seemed like the relationship between the two had deteriorated to the point where it seemed unsalvageable. It had all started so well for the duo. The pair were certainly on good terms in July 2019, when Trump called Zelensky to congratulate Ukraine's then recently elected president on his victory. Trump even described that conversation as a perfect phone call. However, the years that followed saw Trump claim that he could end Putin's invasion of Ukraine in 24 hours. Zelensky's response was to invite the then U.S. presidential candidate to Ukraine, where he would need 24 minutes to explain to President Trump that he can't manage this war in that time frame. Those sorts of comments seemed to spark animosity between the pair. When Trump became president, he set about trying to end the Ukraine war. That led to him holding a meeting with Putin in Saudi Arabia, to which Zelensky wasn't invited. Ukraine's president expressed his disappointment, and from there, the relationship between Trump and Zelensky seemed to crumble. Trump accused Zelensky of being a dictator without elections, while also claiming that Zelensky has low approval ratings. He even insinuated that Ukraine caused the war with Russia. suggesting that Zelensky had multiple opportunities to make a deal over 3 years that he didn't take. Then came the February 28th meeting at the White House. That explosive meeting saw Trump tell Zelensky that he was gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's backed you far more than a lot of people say they should have. In the wake of that meeting, Trump suspended military aid to Ukraine, followed closely by doing the same for the sharing of U.S. military intelligence. By the first week of March, America's president seemed to have set out his stall. He'd favor Russia over Ukraine in any peace talks, but Trump is nothing if not unpredictable. Mere weeks after that explosive White House bust-up, delegates from Trump and Zelensky's parties met in Saudi Arabia. This time, Putin wasn't invited. After a multi-hour meeting, the two sides emerged with a ceasefire agreement. All fighting would stop for 30 days, assuming Putin agreed to the terms. And regardless of what Putin said, the U.S. would lift the suspension on military aid and intelligence sharing with Ukraine. Of course, Russia's president said no to the ceasefire. However, this Saudi meeting between Ukraine and the U.S. sparked a phone call between Trump and Putin, which brings us to the possible reason that Trump conducted his 180. In that phone call, Putin suggested a partial ceasefire that would see both Russia and Ukraine promise to stop attacks on each other's energy infrastructures. Those attacks have been a massive source of problems for Ukraine. Russia has destroyed around 80% of Ukraine's energy infrastructure using missile, drone, and bomb assaults. Halting those attacks, even if it was only for 30 days, would be massive for Ukraine. It could also be seen as a step closer to the peace that Trump wants to create. Trump was happy with the outcome, but then Putin betrayed the U.S. president. Despite the Kremlin's claims that Putin had ordered an immediate ceasefire on all energy infrastructure-related attacks, in the wake of the call between Trump and Russia's leader, any ceasefire was over practically before it started. Around an hour after the call, air raid sirens were blaring in Sloviansk, which is part of the Donetsk region Russia has targeted throughout the war. Putin had launched an attack including missiles and 40 drones, some of which targeted an energy substation in Sloviansk. "You see?" Zelensky exclaimed following the attack. "There is already an air alert, so this ceasefire is already not working." Ukraine responded with a drone assault on Russia's Engels airbase, which destroyed an oil storage facility, and Trump's vaunted ceasefire was over. What does any of that have to do with Trump's promise to help Ukraine secure Patriot missiles? The answer is that Trump has just seen Putin for who he really is. If the U.S. president previously believed he could trust Russia's leader to keep his word, there's no chance he feels the same way now. Putin betrayed Trump. He broke Trump's trust and destroyed the ceasefire America's president worked so hard to create. Perhaps we can boil Trump's Patriot promise down to the simple fact that he now wants revenge on Putin. Russia made Trump look like a fool, and he's not going to take it lying down, resulting in him offering Ukraine more support than he has at any other point during his second term as U.S. president. While these ceasefire issues likely provide the biggest reason why Trump did his 180 on the Ukraine war, they don't give us the full story. Remember where Trump wants the Patriot missiles to come from: Europe. He hasn't promised any of America's stockpiles to Ukraine. Instead, he told Zelensky that he'll help Ukraine's leader source the missiles from its European partners. That promise plays into Trump's agenda for Europe. According to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, or CSIS, Trump has long shown a certain level of apathy toward both NATO and Europe as a whole. Many in Europe are anticipating a wholesale change in the U.S.'s policy toward European defense, with the likelihood being that we'll see a major reduction of American forces on the continent soon. Trump's message with this reduction, along with much of his rhetoric surrounding Europe, is that the continent needs to get its act together, says CSIS. In other words, Europe needs to take more responsibility for its own defense, along with the aid being provided to Ukraine, because the the US may not provide the security guarantees it has for so many decades anymore. On March 18th, NBC reported that Trump is considering giving up the US command of NATO. The US has held this command for almost 75 years, starting with the appointment of President Dwight D. Eisenhower when NATO was first formed. Al Jazeera reports that Europe is also planning for a future where it needs to replace the US as a member, either via inviting new members or boosting European defense spending within the next 5 to 10 years. If Trump's goal is to push Europe into doing more to defend itself without US involvement, his offer to Zelensky may be an extension of that target. The US won't provide Patriot missiles. However, Europe can. It has hundreds of them. So Trump's 180 may have as much to do with him accomplishing his European agenda as it does with him extending an olive branch toward Zelensky in the wake of Putin's ceasefire betrayal. The only challenge now is that Trump's gambit may not work. Ukraine's European allies may refuse to donate more of their Patriot missiles, especially given the long manufacturing delays and extensive cost of the missiles that we mentioned earlier. If that happens, Zelensky will have to reprioritize by further protecting Ukraine's existing Patriot launchers against Russian attacks. He'll also have to get more selective with the targets Ukraine uses Patriot to confront. That's not a situation Zelensky wishes to find himself in. It would mean allowing some Ukrainian cities to absorb more damage from Russia's aerial barrages because he's prioritizing other locations due to a lack of Patriot missiles. For now, such concerns can go on to the back burner. Zelensky has scored a massive diplomatic coup with Trump's promise to help him secure more Patriot missiles from Ukraine's European allies. That promise is symbolic of Trump's 180 and suggests that Ukraine and the US can place their alliance on a more stable footing in the months to come. But what do you think about Trump's Patriot missile promise? Will the US president be able to help Ukraine get more of these powerful missiles from its European allies? What does all of this mean for the future of Trump and Zelensky's relationship? Tell us your thoughts in the comments, and remember to subscribe to the TA Politics for up-to-date information on the latest Ukrainian military innovations. We strive to be an accurate, up-to-date source of news surrounding major conflicts, and we greatly appreciate your support.